Last year, we recorded 16,000 events in more than 85 countries.
This is Space for All. Welcome to Space for All. I'm your host, Valerie McKiernan. Today, we're speaking with Alma Okpalefe. Alma is an executive director for World Space Week. I think you're going to love her story. I had so much fun talking to her, and I'm really excited to raise awareness about World Space Week as it's coming up on October 4th. Well, it starts on October 4th. So let's listen in to my conversation with Alma. Hi, Alma. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're very excited to have you on the Space for All podcast. Can you do me a favor and just introduce yourself before we get going?
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Alma Okpalefe, and I'm presently the executive director at the World Space Week Association.
Can you tell us how you got here? How did you start in the space industry?
I always snicker at that question because it really wasn't intentional. I'm a lawyer, so I went to university to study law with the intention of breaking into oil and gas. I'm Nigerian, so of course the oil and gas sector is really big here. So most people are trying to get into a career in oil and gas. So I was in the UK, and whilst I was doing my course, I saw there was on a notice board, there was a sign up for space law. And I was like, what is that? Who does that? And oddly enough, they were offering £50 because this was in the UK. So they're offering £50 to do the course in space law.
So offering £50.
Yeah, that's for amazing. You to sign on. Exactly, because nobody wanted to do it.
Wow.
So they were that desperate for people to do space law. So I spoke with my parents at the time, and there are cultural differences. In Nigeria, when you go to school and you go to school on your parents' dime, you're literally sent to school to do certain things, not to come up with funny ideas when you get there to start doing odd courses like space law. So I discussed it with my parents, and they're like, what is that? Do you know anybody who has done space law? Do you have any reference points? Where are you going to work? So that was the end of that. I went on and did, things that would help me get into oil and gas, which was the original plan. And I ended up coming back to Nigeria. That was to do law school in Nigeria.
Okay.
Because I was qualified in the UK, and then I came back to Nigeria to get qualified. My plan was to just get qualified and then go back to the UK. But a week before I was scheduled to go back, a family friend of mine called me who was a headhunter. And she's like, do you know anyone that's done space law? And I thought, oh my, I really should have taken that £50. But I was like, no, coincidentally, I do not know anyone. But it's commercial, I could, if it's transactional, I can give it a stab. And that's how I ended up working for the government on a project to launch the first communications satellite in sub-Saharan Africa. So I joined as a legal officer, and I remained there for almost 2 decades, actually. So just,
wow.
Rising through the ranks, learning on the job. Of course, it was a very steep learning curve because, as I mentioned at the beginning, space law is very foreign to everyone at that point. Nobody really understood what you're actually supposed to do. And to be frank, for a very long time, I did not consider myself a space lawyer. I just considered myself a lawyer that does commercial law, and some of those transactions happen to be in the space domain. So that was very different from actually considering myself as a space lawyer. So I did that for, like I said, almost 2 decades. And last year, towards the end of last year, I joined the World Space Week Association just to give myself a little bit more breath, and also to see if I could assist with one of the things I noticed was a major challenge during my time with NIGECOMSAT as a legal counsel, and that was people's perception of the space industry. Especially here in Africa, trying to get stakeholders, whether it is the Senate, whether it's the executive arm, whether it is just general potential end users of space technology, to even understand that there are benefits to what a lot of people consider to be a luxury. When you have competing needs like, electricity, good roads, fundamental education, space can be considered or seen to be a bit of a luxury. So I always found that there was an issue with awareness and getting people to understand and relaying the importance of space in a very practical and contextually relevant way. And so when the opportunity came to work with World Space Week Association, of course, I thought, this is amazing. This is one of the oldest space advocacy organizations in the world. Mm-hmm. So, of course, I jumped on that on that ticket quite quickly, and here I am.
So, wow, 2 decades as a space lawyer. What did you do as a space lawyer? What did that position require?
Well, initially I was thrown into the thick of it because we're right in the middle of a communication satellite project. Mm-hmm. So it required a lot of contractual negotiations, and also risk management in terms of launch in orbit insurance, all of that. And then after the launch, you're now thrown into, the situation, okay, we have all this capacity on this satellite. How am I going to translate that into services that are useful to the Nigerian people and Africa at large? Mm-hmm. So you start looking at lease contracts to lease the bandwidth. You're also looking at other end user contracts that will allow the applications, people to use applications that would rely on your bandwidth, things like telemedicine or e-education. So you're looking at all contracts related to those delivering those sort of services as well. So even though it's space related, a lot of your work is, as a lawyer, is framed around, trying to utilize that bandwidth in the most efficient way. Okay. For your population. So in terms of contracts, like I said, for education, for agriculture, all these space-dependent services. And
your position was within the government, correct? Like it wasn't with a specific company?
Oh, it was with a company. Okay. The name of the satellite operator is NIGECOMSAT. Okay. So, but it's government-owned, so it is a government position.
Got it. Okay. Are most positions in the space industry in Nigeria still government owned or government positions?
Yes. I mean, the key ones, right, would be with the Space Research Agency, which is government owned. It has a lot of centers under the Space Research Agency. Mm-hmm. And of course, the agency where I worked, which is NIGECOMSAT. We are getting a few, not so many, but a few startups in the space area which are privately owned, but in comparison with the amount of work they're doing and the space agency, it's not really comparable.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. At least not yet.
Not yet. Right. I mean, there's a lot of people entering into small businesses entering into the space industry right now at a pretty crazy pace. So
Exactly.
I wouldn't be surprised if they start popping up all over the place. Okay, so now you're with World Space Week.
Yeah.
How has that transition been? What are the differences in what you did for 20 years and what you're doing today?
Oh my word, it's like night and day. Quite frankly, I don't even know where to start because, initially I thought, this was like real pansy work. I'd have like some time off. And honestly, I feel, I feel like an octopus, I'm like doing like 8 different things at the same time. And honestly, I took a bit of humble pie, right? Because I had assumed, being in the not-for-profit sector, it would be perhaps a walk in the park.
Yeah.
But it certainly isn't because you're trying to manage all sorts of stakeholders, all sorts of tasks, all sorts of demands, all at the same time. And given the sort of work that the World Space Week Association does with coordinators across the world,
Yeah.
last year we recorded 16,000 events in more than 85 countries. So you can imagine trying to coordinate, with coordinators in all these various countries through these time zones on different matters. So it is a lot. It's definitely different from what I was doing before. What I was doing before, I had done it for long enough to be very capable at it,
Yeah.
almost effortlessly. And it was legal work, right? So, but now being an executive director, you're doing the legal, the financial, you're doing, everything. And you're dealing with all sorts of people, like I said, which is actually the beauty of it, because no 2 days are the same.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
do you have a territory, right? As an executive director, what is your territory for World Space Week? Or how does that work?
Well, okay, at my level, the territory is really global.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah. So, exactly. So, so what I have to do is coordinate with the national coordinators
Okay.
to ensure that they have the resources, not financial, but at least the educational resources that will help them to spread awareness about space through coordinating World Space Week events in their various countries or jurisdictions. So, ironically, I'm busiest all the 51 weeks outside of World Space Week. Well, during World Space Week, I should actually have a break. But, a lot of the work is in the build up
Yeah.
to ensuring that, all of this happens in that 1 week.
Wow. Okay.
Well, as much as possible.
16,000 events last year. That's in
Yes.
1 week. Like that's that's amazing. And okay, so let's go back for a second. Can you explain to us what World Space Week is?
Yes, it's amazing. It's one of those things, that everyone assumes that they know, but until they probe a little bit further, and you're like, actually, I don't know what this is. So, so World Space Week was actually declared by the UN General Assembly in December 1999. And it falls from the 4th to the 10th of October every year. And this period has been set aside for almost a global celebration of space, of all the achievements in space exploration, space technology, etc. And we also use that opportunity to build awareness about space and to educate the public about space, about all the challenges that space is helping to address, and also maybe some of the challenges that are being experienced with furthering space exploration, etc. So it's really a time to cast a spotlight on space, and we strive to do that by having all these events. So it's like in that synchronization, you get a very loud voice for space in that particular period. In terms of the actual event, it's really, there's so much breadth in what you can do, and it would be considered an event, whether it's stargazing, an outreach activity with kids, putting on a space themed movie night or something like that, or things that are considered perhaps more intellectually stimulating, like webinars or having, talks in parliament. If you go on our website, you can see there's all sorts of ideas for events that you can put on during World Space Week. But the ultimate aim is to celebrate space and to enjoy yourself whilst you're doing this, of course.
Yeah, so you can go on your website, on the
Yeah.
World Space Week website, which we'll, of course, have linked, to go see the events that are out there that you could attend in your area
Yes,
or
yes.
virtually, right? There's suggestions on events that you can put on
Absolutely.
yourself. And then there's also a way to, for lack of a better word, log the event.
Absolutely. What we have is a global calendar. So it allows you to see what's happening globally. And you also, as an individual and organization, you can register your own events as well, put them on the calendar so that people in your area can actually go and see what's happening in their area and may be willing to, attend your event or log in if it's a virtual event as well. And we keep those records, and that's what forms the reports that we deliver after World Space Week.
Wow. Okay. So October 4th is the kickoff day. Is there any
Yes.
just a question? Is there any like specific kickoff, or is there like a video or something like that we can go watch?
Funny you should ask that, Valerie, because normally we don't actually, at the global level, put up an inaugural event of that sort. Mainly because we try not to take the shine of the national coordinators. But this year, we're going to be having some webinars on the 4th of October. So those would the idea is to just have a very international look or insight into space and climate change, just hearing what different actors, different nations have to say about that through webinars.
Wow. I'm very excited. I know I mentioned to you before this discussion that I've been in the industry for such a long time, most of my life, but this is the first time I've actually been in, like, understood what World Space Week is, which is really unfortunate that in the United States, at least for my area of the United States and aerospace industry, this isn't more widely known. And I'm extremely excited to be a part of getting that word out there because it needs to be more prevalent over here. Now, question for you that you might need to think about. As you are getting involved in the space industry, and you didn't take that class, right? You had no idea what you were getting into at the time. Was there something that helped you, someone, a book, anything that helped you really get that knowledge? Or did you just learn everything on the fly?
I think for me, a lot of things happen by process of elimination. Firstly, even before the oil and gas, I know I told you, if you recall, I mentioned that I wanted to do oil and gas. Now, when I was in university, I signed up for a mentorship program. I didn't know it was going to be like one of the worst mistakes. Yeah, it was horrific. So I signed up for a mentorship. So the way it works in the UK is you can either be a solicitor or a barrister. Barrister goes to court, you have the right of audience in court, whereas solicitors tend to do more transactional work, paperwork, and they don't appear in court. So the training is a bit different. So I had decided I wanted to be a barrister. And so they had put me in some mentorship program at uni. And I spoke to this young man, I don't remember his name. You'll probably understand why soon. And I told him what my plans were, that I want to do commercial law. At that time, I was open to both maritime and oil and gas.
Okay.
And he said to me, Alma, please, you're Black, do immigration and asylum.
Oh my gosh.
Exactly. And
Wow.
I was very young, very impressionable, and I thought, well, he obviously knows what he's talking about. He has great reference points on this. He's walked this walk. So I didn't accept it fully, but subconsciously I started working towards that. So I come out of uni, I do my qualifications, and the first job I get is doing, guess what? Immigration and asylum. So I'm there, and Valerie, it would help if I was like horrible at it. I was actually very good at it. Yeah, I actually ended up being very good at it. And they ended up promoting me. And I remember the day I got my promotion letter. I don't know if you've ever read Eat, Pray, Love.
Yes, actually.
Or seen the movie.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I had that moment because they gave me this letter, and next thing you know, I'm in the bathroom wailing, crying my eyes out, and I couldn't. It's only until I watched that movie that I understood what I felt. I felt like I was trapped by people's expectations, and I wasn't living for me, and at least in the authenticity of what I wanted. And so I resigned.
Good for you.
In a week. I resigned and I left. And that's when I went back to Nigeria.
Got it.
Okay. So that was like the process of elimination that got me there, right? But whilst I was in Nigeria, once I started the job, I still didn't expect it to be a long-term thing. But I now had a reverse experience with an excellent mentor.
Okay.
Right? She said, there's something about you. I think you'd be really good here. You may not see it yet, but I know that this is all new, space is all new, but just give it a chance. And I have a feeling that you could really make something for and of yourself here. And so that's what I did. Because of those words, I threw myself into it. I ate, drank, sleep, would sleep, space, or at least to the extent of what I needed to get the job done. Like I said, I'd never really felt like a space lawyer. I felt like a commercial lawyer that happened to do transactions in space. Mm-hmm. And so to that extent, I poured myself into that. And I learned what I could with the resources I had. I lapped up everything I could find on the internet, going for conferences, going for courses as well. So a lot of it was learning on the job. And to be honest, so space law by proxy. Yeah, I did. Eventually.
Can I have my 50 pounds?
At this point, I would have paid them like £50 to take the course. Honestly, So I just learned on the job and did as much reading outside. But to be honest, I learned the most from the failures. Because, like I said, the learning curve was so steep. We were all really young at the time. Launched the satellite failed in orbit. I learned all of the processes that go with that failure.
Did you say satellite failed in orbit?
Yeah. Oh my! Yes, it did. After 18 months, you can imagine.
No.
So,
what happened after that?
A lot.
Oh my God.
I think we need like 2 podcasts because that was a whole other drama. But like I said, very important for learning, learning how to deal with people and deal with the Senate, deal with the public. Right. The public were like, you never even had a satellite. You lied to us. That sort of thing.
Oh.
It was a very interesting time to be Alma.
Oh,
But
my gosh.
yeah, so getting through all that, learning, which is why one of the reasons I'm so big on awareness and making sure people understand, what space is, what it entails, what the benefits are,
Yeah.
and what the risks are as well.
Yeah.
So that's me. So I'd say the things I've learned the most from have been people. People, the right people who are supportive, learning on the job, and learning the lessons that come from failing as well.
Yeah. And I have to ask, you guys did launch another satellite?
Yes, we did. We did in record time, actually.
Really?
So yeah,
Oh, that's
for
great.
those days. These days, they're whipping them up every day.
I really love the theme this year of World Space Week because it does really support that that message that space is not a luxury; it is a necessity at this point. Like,
Exactly.
we need it, and here's why. So
Exactly.
I'm really excited about World Space Week this year to hear all of those different messages.
So World Space Week is merely like 2 weeks or 3 weeks away. So this is a good time, if you haven't already, to start planning your events for World Space Week. Please do register those events on our global calendar at www.worldspaceweek.org. So if you go to the global calendar, you can register your events there, and they'll be on there for everybody to see, and you can get fresh attendance through that. It's space and climate change this year, but of course, do whatever floats your boat. But we would love for you to keep on theme, but the important thing is to celebrate the achievements of space and to spread awareness about space during this time. So we look forward to your registrations and to all your participation.
Great. Thank you so much for your time, Alma. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today on the Space for All podcast, brought to you by the Women's Aerospace Network. You can subscribe to our podcast on Spotify or iTunes, and you can watch full episodes on YouTube. For more information on the Women's Aerospace Network, visit womensaerospace.com or follow us on social media. We hope you will join us again for the next episode of Space for All, where we can all find a place in space.